What if one of the habits you repeat every morning is quietly changing the environment inside your body in a way you cannot feel? There may be no pain, no unusual lump, no sudden warning. Yet over many years, the foods and drinks you choose can influence your blood sugar, hormones, inflammation, gut bacteria, and even the way your cells respond to damage. That does not mean one meal causes cancer. It also does not mean cancer can always be prevented through diet. Genetics, age, tobacco exposure, alcohol, infections, environmental chemicals, body weight, and simple biological chance all matter. But diet is still one of the few major risk factors you can influence every single day. I'm Dr. James Carter, and in this video, I want to show you how common foods may either support your body's natural defenses or gradually create conditions in which abnormal cells have an easier time surviving. Cancer is often described as a genetic disease because it begins when certain cells acquire changes that allow them to grow without normal control. But genes do not operate in isolation. Cells constantly receive signals from the environment around them. Insulin can tell cells that energy is available. Inflammatory chemicals can change how tissues repair themselves. The gut microbiome can produce substances that either support or irritate the intestinal lining. Nutrient deficiencies may also affect immune function and the body's ability to maintain healthy tissue. This is why the overall pattern of your diet matters more than any single so-called superfood. Throughout this video, we will examine sweetened drinks, ultra-processed foods, heavily salted products, processed meat, red meat, fiber, and even the way meat is cooked. Some of these categories are straightforward. Others are far more complicated than the frightening headlines suggest. The goal is not to make you afraid of eating. Fear usually leads people toward extreme diets they cannot maintain. The goal is to help you recognize repeated patterns that may slowly push the body toward higher inflammation, unstable blood sugar, poorer gut health, and weaker protection over time. And the first pattern is especially easy to overlook because it does not even feel like food. It requires almost no digestion, creates very little fullness, and can deliver a large amount of sugar into your bloodstream within minutes. For many people, it is the first thing they consume every morning. The first category is liquid sugar. Most people immediately think of soda, but the list is much longer. Energy drinks, sweetened coffee, bottled tea, sports drinks, flavored milk, boba tea, sweetened smoothies, and even fruit juice can all deliver a concentrated dose of sugar very quickly. Fruit juice is where many people become confused. A whole orange contains water, vitamins, plant compounds, and fiber. You have to chew it, and the fiber helps slow the movement of sugar into your bloodstream. A glass of orange juice may contain the sugar from several oranges, but much of the fiber has been removed. You can drink it in less than a minute and still feel hungry afterward. This difference matters because repeated surges in blood glucose require the body to release more insulin. Insulin is essential for life. It helps move glucose out of the bloodstream and into your cells. But insulin is also part of the body's growth signaling system. When insulin levels remain elevated too often, especially in people with insulin resistance, cells are repeatedly exposed to signals associated with energy storage and growth. That does not mean insulin directly causes cancer. It means the metabolic environment may become less favorable when high blood sugar and high insulin are present day after day. There is another reason researchers pay attention to glucose metabolism. Healthy cells usually produce energy through efficient pathways that use oxygen. Many cancer cells, however, consume glucose at unusually high rates and rely more heavily on a rapid process known as aerobic glycolysis. This behavior is sometimes called the Warburg effect. You may have heard the phrase, "sugar feeds cancer," but that statement is too simplistic. Every cell in your body uses glucose, including healthy brain and muscle cells. You cannot starve cancer simply by removing all carbohydrates. The more useful concern is whether your overall diet repeatedly promotes high blood sugar, excess calories, weight gain, and chronically elevated insulin. Liquid sugar makes that pattern especially easy because it bypasses many of the natural breaks found in whole food. A practical first step is not necessarily to ban every sweet drink forever. Start by identifying what you drink most often. Replace one daily serving with water, unsweetened tea, sparkling water, or coffee with less added sugar. Choose whole fruit more often than juice, and do not assume a label such as natural means the drink is low in sugar. But sugar is only one concern. Some drinks and staple foods may carry another, less obvious risk, one that comes not from calories, but from contamination. In the last section, we focused on what happens when large amounts of sugar enter the bloodstream quickly. But there is another category of food that deserves just as much attention, and its impact goes far beyond sugar alone. I'm talking about ultra-processed foods. These products are designed to be convenient, inexpensive, and highly enjoyable to eat. Breakfast pastries, packaged snack cakes, flavored chips, instant noodles, frozen ready meals, sugary breakfast cereals, and many fast food items all fall somewhere along this spectrum. Now, it's important to be realistic. Eating a frozen pizza at a family gathering or grabbing a packaged snack during a long trip is not what concerns me. What matters is when these foods become the foundation of someone's diet instead of the exception. Researchers believe this pattern may influence health in several different ways. First, many ultra-processed foods are rich in refined starches and added sugars while being relatively low in fiber. This combination often leads to faster digestion, greater swings in blood glucose, and reduced feelings of fullness, making it easier to consume more calories than the body actually needs. Second, these foods often contain fewer of the vitamins, minerals, and plant compounds naturally found in vegetables, legumes, fruits, and whole grains. Your body depends on these nutrients to support immune function, tissue repair, and healthy cellular activity. But the third reason is the one many people overlook. Every meal built around highly processed food is usually replacing something else. A packaged pastry often replaces oatmeal. French fries replace vegetables. A processed dessert replaces fresh fruit. Instant noodles replace beans or whole grains. Over months and years, your body doesn't simply receive more processed food. It receives less of the protective foods that help nourish beneficial gut bacteria and support the lining of the digestive tract. Scientists continue to investigate how certain additives and highly refined food ingredients may influence the gut microbiome. While many questions remain, one point is becoming increasingly clear. A healthier microbiome appears to support immune regulation, maintain the intestinal barrier, and produce compounds that help keep the colon functioning normally. Instead of asking yourself whether one packaged snack is dangerous, ask a better question. What healthy food is this replacing? Sometimes improving your diet isn't about removing something. It's about making room for something better. And that brings us to another habit that has been part of traditional diets for centuries, but can become problematic when consumed too often or in excessive amounts. Let's talk about salt. Salt itself is not the enemy. In fact, your body cannot function without it. Sodium helps regulate fluid balance, supports nerve signals, and allows muscles to contract properly. Eliminating salt completely would be neither practical nor healthy. The concern is long-term excess. Many modern diets contain far more sodium than people realize, not because of the salt shaker on the table, but because sodium is already built into processed foods, canned soups, packaged sauces, cured meats, frozen meals, and many restaurant dishes. Over time, consistently high sodium intake may do more than affect blood pressure. Researchers have found that excessive salt can repeatedly irritate the protective lining of the stomach. When that delicate barrier is damaged over and over again, stomach tissue may become more vulnerable to chronic inflammation and other harmful influences. One important example involves Helicobacter pylori, commonly known as H. pylori. This bacterium infects the stomachs of millions of people around the world. Many never realize they have it because symptoms can be mild or absent for years. However, when a long-standing H. pylori infection is combined with repeated irritation from a very high-salt diet, the stomach lining may experience even greater stress. That doesn't mean every salty meal causes stomach cancer. Far from it. Risk develops over long periods and usually involves multiple contributing factors working together. Another reason preserved foods receive attention is the way some of them are prepared. Salt-cured meats, heavily preserved fish, and certain processed products may contain compounds that researchers continue to study because of their potential to damage DNA under specific conditions. Again, frequency matters far more than an occasional serving. A practical approach is surprisingly simple. Taste your food before adding extra salt. Compare sodium levels on nutrition labels. Choose fresh foods more often than heavily preserved alternatives. Use herbs, garlic, lemon juice, or spices to add flavor instead of relying entirely on salt. These small habits may seem insignificant today, but over many years they can gradually reduce unnecessary stress on the digestive system. Next, we're going to examine one of the most misunderstood topics in nutrition. Many people use the terms processed meat and red meat as though they mean the same thing. Scientifically, they do not. Now we've reached one of the most debated subjects in nutrition. Many headlines simply warn people to avoid meat, but that message leaves out an important distinction. From a scientific standpoint, processed meat and unprocessed red meat are not identical, and understanding the difference matters. Processed meat refers to products that have been preserved through curing, smoking, salting, or the addition of preservatives. Bacon, hot dogs, sausages, deli meats, pepperoni, and many packaged sandwich meats all fall into this category. These products are often higher in sodium and may contain nitrites or nitrates that help preserve freshness and color. Under certain conditions, these compounds can contribute to the formation of substances called nitrosamines, which researchers have studied because of their ability to damage DNA in laboratory settings. This is one of the reasons organizations such as the World Health Organization classify processed meat differently from fresh red meat. But fresh beef, lamb, or pork deserve a more balanced discussion. Studies have reported associations between high intakes of red meat and colorectal cancer, yet the relationship is considerably more complex. Much of the available evidence comes from long-term observational research. These studies are valuable because they follow thousands of people over many years, but they cannot prove that one food alone caused a disease. People who consume large amounts of processed meat may also exercise less, smoke more, eat fewer vegetables, or consume more alcohol. Researchers work hard to account for these differences, but no study can remove every possible influence. That is why nutrition science rarely depends on one paper or one dramatic headline. Instead, scientists look for consistent patterns across many studies. The strongest evidence continues to point toward limiting processed meat, rather than fearing every serving of fresh red meat. There is another question that deserves even more attention. When someone eats a large steak several nights each week, what usually disappears from the plate? For many people, it isn't just about eating more meat, it's about eating far less fiber. And that missing fiber may play a much larger role than most people realize. When conversations focus entirely on foods to avoid, people often miss an equally important question. What foods should we be eating more of? One of the strongest answers is dietary fiber. Unlike sugar or fat, fiber passes through much of the digestive system without being fully digested by our own enzymes. Instead, it becomes food for the trillions of bacteria living inside the colon. Those bacteria are far from passive passengers. Many produce short-chain fatty acids, including butyrate, a compound that helps nourish cells lining the colon and supports a healthy intestinal barrier. Researchers continue to investigate how these substances influence inflammation, immune function, and long-term colon health. This is one reason diets rich in vegetables, beans, lentils, fruits, and whole grains are consistently associated with better health outcomes. An interesting area of research involves resistant starch. Unlike ordinary starch, resistant starch reaches the large intestine largely intact, where it is fermented by beneficial bacteria in much the same way as dietary fiber. Foods such as beans, lentils, cooked and cooled potatoes, cooked and cooled rice, and slightly green bananas naturally contain resistant starch. Several studies have suggested that when resistant starch is added to diets high in red meat, certain biological markers linked to colon cell damage become less pronounced. This does not mean resistant starch cancels out every possible risk associated with an unhealthy diet, but it reminds us of something incredibly important. Nutrition is rarely about one food acting alone. It is the entire meal that shapes the environment inside your digestive tract. The same principle applies to cooking methods. Cooking meat at extremely high temperatures, especially over an open flame until it becomes heavily charred, can produce compounds such as heterocyclic amines and polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons. Scientists continue to study these substances because laboratory research suggests they may damage DNA under certain conditions. Fortunately, simple cooking habits may help reduce unnecessary exposure. Avoid burning food until it turns black. Cook over moderate heat when possible. Turn meat more frequently on the grill, instead of allowing one side to char deeply. Marinating meat before cooking may also reduce the formation of some of these compounds. None of these steps require giving up foods you enjoy. Instead, they focus on reducing repeated exposure while improving the overall quality of your meals. And after everything we've discussed, one final question remains. If no single food determines your future, what kind of eating pattern offers the greatest protection over the long term? After everything we've discussed, you may be wondering what all of this means for your everyday life. Should you completely eliminate sugar? Never eat another hamburger? Avoid every processed food forever? For most people, the answer is no. One of the biggest mistakes I see is turning nutrition into an all-or-nothing decision. Someone follows a perfect diet for 2 weeks, feels overwhelmed, and eventually returns to the same habits they were trying to escape. Long-term health is rarely built that way. Instead of chasing perfection, focus on patterns. Ask yourself what your meals look like over an average month, not over a single weekend or a special celebration. Do sugary drinks appear every day, or only occasionally? Are processed meats part of your routine, or something you enjoy once in a while? Does your plate usually contain vegetables, beans, whole grains, or fruit, or are those foods missing most of the time? Small, consistent improvements often have a much greater impact than short periods of extreme restriction. If you want a simple framework to remember, start with 4 practical habits. First, reduce the foods that repeatedly create the greatest metabolic burden. That may mean replacing a daily sugary beverage with water or unsweetened tea, or choosing processed meat less often. Second, increase the foods that naturally protect your body. Vegetables, legumes, fruits, nuts, seeds, and whole grains provide fiber along with vitamins, minerals, and thousands of plant compounds that work together in ways scientists are still discovering. Third, pay attention to how you prepare your meals. Cooking methods, portion sizes, and food combinations matter just as much as the ingredients themselves. A balanced meal prepared at home is often very different from a heavily processed version of the same food. Finally, give yourself permission to be realistic. A birthday cake, a family barbecue, or dinner out with friends is not what determines your future health. The habits you repeat hundreds of times each year are far more important than the occasional indulgence. Remember, no single food can guarantee that cancer will or will not develop. Cancer is a complex disease influenced by genetics, age, environmental exposures, infections, lifestyle, and many factors that remain beyond our control. But while we cannot control everything, we can influence the environment we create inside our bodies. Every balanced meal is another opportunity to support healthier blood sugar regulation, reduce unnecessary inflammation, nourish the gut microbiome, and provide the nutrients your cells need to function at their best. I'm Dr. James Carter, and I hope this discussion has helped you look beyond sensational headlines and understand the bigger picture. Rather than asking, which food should I fear? Ask yourself a better question. What is one realistic change I can continue for the next 10 years? Because in the end, lasting health is rarely shaped by one dramatic decision. It is built by the ordinary choices we make, one meal at a time.